afternoon, everybody. Thank you for finding the time to join this quickly offered review session on how to build assessments in Eduphoria, and more specifically, how to address the needs of these assessments so that the students view them online. The decision to move the assessments from Schoology to Eduphoria for the second 9 weeks was made, honestly, quite recently. The purpose of it was to better allow you and your campus administration, as well as your teachers, better view of how to view how your students are doing at an individual and at a class and at a campus and also at a district level. So some of the features that you are used to seeing from Schoology, sort of like matching, for example, is not an option in Eduphoria, but a good bit of the features still are available, and also we're also able to turn on multiple support levels for your students, and we'll walk through all of those. So without dragging myself out any longer, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so somebody gives me a thumbs up, make sure my screen's showing. Awesome. Okay, so when you first log into Eduphoria, obviously if you have built tests before, or if you haven't, you're going to select Aware. And once Aware loads, you have your tabs on the left-hand side, and you want to select your second one titled Assessments. So if you have not built a test in a while, the links have changed a little bit, but realistically, the process is still the same. The layout also is going to change a little, but the process remains the same of what we've done previously. So just to clarify what we have, the top one says create a new blank test. And what that allows you to do is basically build a test one question at a time. You can have much more control of how your questions get laid out, but it also is much more time consuming. So my suggestion is, more than likely you will be provided the test by your program director, and you're already going to have the questions. Hopefully they're giving it to you like in Word or something like that, so you're able to just copy and paste. So my suggestion is that you select create new quick test key. So when we select that link, our screen's going to change, and we have to work through all these blocks before we can activate our test. So we have to give it a title, whatever the title is that your program director asks you to use, or if there's a specific naming scheme they've asked you to follow, please continue to follow that naming scheme so we understand what test you're creating and the grade level and all. So I'm going to go ahead and create a test with you. So this is going to be a 5th grade revising and editing. Okay. So the next step is I'm just going to work my way down the page. I have to select my subject. Okay, so what is the subject of this test? So if you're taking a math test, you obviously select math. So I'm going to go ahead and select English Language Arts. And then you have to make sure you're selecting your grade level. Okay. So underneath that is your performance levels. And the expectation is that you enter the passing expectations for STAR. So if you know what those are, you can go ahead and enter those. And I'm just going to guess at some of these. If you don't know, you can leave those as is and notify your program director that they will have to go back and clarify what those scores are. These can be changed at a later date, just in case you're incorrect on those. Okay. Your next option, then, you have your test type. If you've created one at a campus level before, you basically only saw like campus tests, team tests, teacher tests, stuff like that. Now when you select it, you obviously see a lot more, because I've updated your accounts to give you district level rights. To explain what you see, the reason you see the first 6 weeks DCA is because we actually still have assessment data back to when we were running our assessments every 6 weeks as opposed to every 9. So when you do create this test, please make sure that you select the second 9 weeks. That way it shows up in the appropriate location. Okay. So now we're down to associated courses. So this is where you're going to tie in your standards. So when I select add a course, I just drill in and find the subject that I'm utilizing with this test. Okay. If for whatever reason you need to add more than one, you can. If you accidentally add the wrong one, you can delete it and add the correct one. And then now you also have to associate your campus. Previously at a campus level, you didn't have to do this because you only had rights to your campus. Now you have to select Edit Campus, and it's going to look at the grade level you had previously selected and populate all the campuses that have students tied to it at that grade level. So since you're doing it for the district level, after all your campuses come up, all you have to do is select all. It's going to pre-check them all and then close. So now all your your campuses are all tied to this test. Okay. Once we've done that, our Build Quick Key button is now blue, and that means we can move to the next step. Any questions on any of that? Go ahead.
Did you change the values to the left because the values look like they adjusted to something different? Because I thought you put in approaching grade levels, and then did it change? Because I'm walking through it as well, and mine's changed, and I'm not sure why.
Let me just reset those. I don't think I clicked off of them correctly. So okay, so I've got those reset. And again, if we mess those up, we can come back and change them later. Okay, so after we've done that, we go ahead and select Build Quick Key. So what this allows us to do is basically predefine how many questions of various types we're going to need for this test. So for example, if we need, say, 10 multiple choice questions, I can say I need 10 of these, a selected response. We're going to leave them as multiple choice, or if you need to, you can also make them as multiple select, which means they can have multiple options for answers. Okay, we'll go ahead and those are now there. Now let's say I also have to add an area for the students to type like a written response. Maybe there's a writing passage that they have to complete. So say I'm going to have 2 of those. And when I select my question type, for writing passage, it is a constructed response. Okay, so that just basically is building an area for the students to enter a written, typed in a response. Next to that, you now have the ability to enter the rubric level. So if it's a 0 to 4, you can leave it alone. If your program director says these are 0 to 8, you can change this to 8. It all comes down to whatever that rubric level is to enter. Okay. So we have those questions. We add those. If you need to enter a numeric response, in other words, like a griddable type of answer, you got to enter a math response. That's called a numerical response. So if I select that, your screen now changes a little bit because it gives you your options on how you want this displayed to the students. So if it's an elementary and like maybe an early middle school level, you might want to leave it as a fixed point decimal, means it doesn't move. And then you tell it how many spaces before and after you want for those students to fill in. Or if it's maybe a secondary like algebra or geometry or a chemistry class or whatever, you can change it to floating. And then you just tell them how many spaces the students have, whether or not you are going to allow negatives. That means if it's a floating one, that means the student also has to identify where the decimal point goes in the answer. So I've got my questions. Now that I have all of those, I can select Create Quick Key. And that's going to now just create all those questions for us.